The monsoon has set in on the great plains of northern India, and in the jungles along the Himalayan foothills, every stream and watering hole is filled to the brim. For the animals, the rains have not only brought relief from the scorching heat of summer, but has also guaranteed the abundance of food and water. Nature is in full glory, and everything seems well. Yet, danger lurks behind the foliage. With every passing year, the actual forest cover that shelter these animals recede. With every passing year, more and more species of animals residing in these depleting forests also near extinction. And as the human race reaches out for the 21st century, nature is under threat. Threat of pollution, threat of breakdown of ecology, threat of depleting natural resources. It seems that human greed for material development may finally ensure the total destruction of the blue planet. But what are the imperatives of a developing country like India? How do we conserve our environment? And how should India settle the development versus environment debate? Early morning, 16th of July, 1998, Dehradun. For these trainees, physical fitness is very important as it will reflect on their future work. This is the 1998 batch of probationers who, after undergoing training for 3 years, will become officers of the Indian Forest Service. The Indira Gandhi National Forest Academy, or IGNFA as it is known, is the premier institution in the country for imparting professional training to the Indian Forest Service. During their training period, probationers as well as in-service officers are inculcated to form a healthy respect for safeguarding their environment.
We try to incorporate the conservation ethos among our officer trainees right in the beginning, so that when they go out in the field, they discharge these duties so that forests, are preserved and maintained to provide eco-stability to the nation.
Every training schedule for people in forestry thus is based on the realization that while humans are unique amongst the Earth's creatures, they do not stand above nor apart from nature. It should be realized that ecological infrastructure conditions the ultimate evolution of the human race, while at the same time, this evolution, in the shape of intervention, itself reshapes the natural environment to reflect man's needs and aspirations. Every student of ecology is aware that there exists a balance between the natural and the vegetable and the animal environment, and this includes humans as well. The relation is based on chains of action and reaction which link man with the rest of his environment. In old civilizations, like India, we can discern every stage of the process by which the regional balance is kept stable, and also how the balance is upset, not only by natural fluctuations, but also by long continued human actions, such as destruction of forests, non-conservative agriculture, and artificial interference of the natural scheme of life.
As far as ecological consequences go, the habitat of animals and plants gets depleted. There is huge amount of soil erosion which affects our agriculture, which affects our irrigation projects, our dams get silted up, our catchments get depleted, and therefore you find that you have more floods and droughts because too much water comes in the rainy season and too little in the dry season. So there are a huge amount. In fact, I would say that the one most critical ecological component we have in this country is the forest.
Today, the forest and biodiversity exist in India because of the selfless sacrifice of generations of the people. If we would have followed the level of consumerism of the Western world, not a single inch of forest of India would have been left. Just for example, a person in the United States consumes roughly about 300 kg of paper a year. In India, we consume only 3 kg of paper. Think about 1,000 million Indian population even trying to attain 1/3 of the lifestyle of the United States. Nothing of the forest and wildlife will remain.
India today is faced with environmental problems that are reflective of its status as a developing nation. While the country tries to cope with the problems of feeding its ever-increasing millions, as well as trying to build an infrastructure that will propel economic growth, environmentalists caution that we must not lose sight of conserving our environment. According to government reports, in the last 2 years itself, India has lost 5,500 square kilometers of forests. But critics claim the figure could be much higher, since the methods used for the census is suspect.
The FSI methodology and report only captures tip of the iceberg, because for one, they only measure the canopy cover. Now, there can be degradation of forests at lower levels, where a forest can be actually a dead forest, which is not regenerating, but as long as the canopy is in position, then it would appear to be a perfect forest, and therefore degradation might be much more than what it shows.
When we talk about the crown density, we talk about 0.4% density, 0.6% density, or 0.8% density. I fully agree. Crown density alone does not reflect the richness of the forest. It could be in some area, crown is totally closed, but there may not be undergrowth. But for the purpose of satellite imagery, for the purpose of aerial photography, which is the quick method available for the forest assessment, we use the crown density. Otherwise, on 10-year cycle, the working plan is taking the assessment and stock maps are being prepared. So that system is also there.
India has a forest cover that encompasses only 15% of its landmass. And yet, on the preservation of this 15% depend the health of the future generations of this nation. In this, the last decade of the 20th century, we have reached a stage where virtually every segment of Indian society has to cope with a chronic shortage of natural resources, while at the same time, our depleting forests have resulted in shrinking habitats for the animals.
If you look into why our forest is depleting, primarily because of the human pressure. The demand far exceeds the position of supply. In a very rough scale, our demand is 6 to 8 times the position of sustained supply. So if we do not increase the productivity, well, it will not be possible to meet the demand. And if you cannot meet the demand, obviously there will be pilferage, and with that forest will deplete.
14th of July 1998. 2 elephants have drifted out of the Rajaji National Park. And unknown to them, they have crossed artificial boundaries created by man. These 2 elephants, from their reserved sanctuary in Uttar Pradesh, had moved into neighboring Haryana and onto human habitation. Forest Department officials from 2 states and the Rajaji National Park mount a concerted operation to bring these elephants back.
हमने उसको 3 तरफ से घेर के फायर करके और क्रैकर्स बजा के हाथियों को जंगल की तरफ मोड़ दिया और जंगल की तरफ वो भागने लग पड़े। उनको हमने उनके पीछे पीछे हम भी भागने लग पड़े और उनको 1-1.5 घंटे के अंदर हम जंगल के ऊपर ले आए, कलेसर जंगल में ले आए। यहाँ आने के बाद फिर हाथी जो हैं अंदर की तरफ जंगल फॉरेस्ट में चले गए, उसमें शाम हो गई थी। नेक्स्ट डे हमने फिर उन हाथियों को अंदर ट्रेस आउट किया किस पॉइंट पे बैठे हुए हैं। वहाँ से उनको हमने फिर उसको यमुना की तरफ मोड़ने का प्रयास किया। पूरा दिन हम उसमें लगे रहे क्योंकि कुछ बरसात होने प्रारंभ हो गई, इस कारण से हमारा ऑपरेशन सेकेंड डे नहीं हो पाया पूरा। रात में हमने फिर प्रयास किया उनको अंदर करने का और उसका नतीजा ये था कि लगभग 2:30 बजे रात में हाथी जो हैं वो ये हरियाणा बॉर्डर के जंगल से निकल के हिमाचल के बॉर्डर के अंदर आए। वहाँ के बाद उन्होंने यमुना क्रॉस करके जो है यूपी में बादशाही बाग में आके निकले।
Elephants are by nature wanderers, and they always tend to move out of their grazing areas in search of new habitats. But with forests shrinking at an alarming rate, occurrences of elephants intruding on habitation have become more and more frequent. Virgin forest is almost a rarity, and a large percentage of existing forests exists because it is protected. Maintaining the sanctity of forests, such as the Rajaji National Park, for the time being ensures that the fragile thread of existence does not snap for these animals. But it is not an easy task to handle.
These foresters, forest officers, they are very hardy, sturdy. They move, they walk around, and elephants can also go. They will use elephants also in some very sensitive area where water level is very high. Otherwise, they move around, and wireless network is on 24 hours, and mostly all the area has been connected with the wireless sets. So any kind of incident, any accident, if it takes place, immediately the forces are shut there.
This is the Chila range of the Rajaji National Park, and the park officials are conducting a combing operation. The motive behind this whole exercise is to ascertain whether any unnatural activity has taken place within the park. The most frequent of such unnatural activity that these officers of the Forest Department have to contend with is the illegal felling and lopping of trees within the national park.
और जगह तो नहीं है ऐसा कुछ?
और जगह नहीं है.
चलो आगे देखें.
This village inside the forest does not have a name. In official records, it is known as Gujjar Basti in compartment 3, Danda Beat, Motichur Range, Rajaji National Park. The probationary officers from the IGNFA are interacting with the villagers. This is part of their training to comprehend the problems associated with forest management. The residents of this village, all belonging to the Gujjar tribe, are a representation of one of the major concerns that haunt the park officials. Having lived here for decades, these Gujars are today totally dependent on the forest for their livelihood. They collect firewood for their hearth as well as fodder for their cattle from the forest. And in the process, they have become the biggest threat to their own environment.
Initially, there were 512 Gujar families. During summer times, they used to go to hills, and then they used to come back on November. But for the last many years, the migration pattern has changed. They are living in the forest for the whole year, and this has created a lot of biotic pressure on this area. And their population has also risen like anything. Now there are 1,390 Gujar families, means around 10,000 Gujars, and around 20,000 cattle. And definitely it is creating a great pressure on the national park, which you can see.
The example of the Gujars highlights the pan-India question of what is to be done with people who are traditionally dependent on the jungle, yet in the process have become a threat to the conservation process. Over the years, though many theories have been propagated on how to tackle the subject, the only consensus reached between conservationists is the fact that the problem exists.
There are either problems which have come about because of restrictions that have been placed on them. The second sorts of problems are problems which come with their own changing aspirations and perceptions. Now, they've lived in forest areas in the past in total harmony. But today they see that the people have roads, they have water, they have electricity, so they want these things. Now, living in forests, especially if they're living in national parks or sanctuaries, it becomes impossible or near impossible. So this creates a set of problems. And this then creates conflicts and things like that.
The governmental view, however, has always been to go in for rehabilitation where feasible. Pathri, near Dehradun, is one such site where the Forest Department has been trying to rehabilitate the Gujars from within the Rajaji National Park. An effort that has been only partially successful. The hindrance to rehabilitation are manifold, from political gamesmanship to the loss of faith in government. But there now seems to be a shift in mood among the Gujars, and park officials are hopeful of completing the process in the near future.
I am confident that this hindrance would be over now, since the Gujars have already given their agreement to move out, and these people have been also taken to the task who are trying to create hindrance. So definitely this is in the favor of the Forest Department or also in the favor of Gujars rehabilitation.
बिल्कुल निकलना चाहता हूँ साहब, अगर मुझे भूमि मिले तो हमारी कोई कारो गुजर नहीं है। भूमि भी ऐसे मिले जो जवान मालिक परिवार है हमारे, उनको 2 एकड़ जो हमसे तय की गई है गवर्नमेंट से, वो हमें मिले तो हम जरूर आ जाएंगे।
This is the Wildlife Institute of India, and in its state-of-the-art computer center, experts track the geological impact of human developmental activity. The basis for these studies stem from the fact that as people continue to occupy more and more forest land for settlement, agriculture, building of dams and other forms of development, shrinking habitat area compresses wildlife populations to levels beyond their carrying capacity. In this, according to experts, lies the genesis of trouble.
The overgrazing, the denudation, the disturbance, and the fact that that provides an opportunity for tiger and leopard to kill them and therefore come into conflict. All these factors, you know, the parks have become islands and they are being threatened. Within the sanctity of the parks are being threatened.
Not only is our environment under threat because of depleting forest cover, but biodiversity and the ecological chain as a whole is under severe strain because of a variety of reasons. These are some of the species that are on the verge of extinction. And the human race must realize that with every animal that becomes extinct, we take another step towards the breakdown of nature.
Every living creature, or all animals and some plants, depends for its survival on other plants and animals. This is a very simple thing. And here the man is also included. So this is what wildlife is. It is a different thing that over the years the man has assumed the supremacy over others, and we are doing so many activities not realizing that our own life support system has become difficult because of overuse and unwise use of the natural living resources.
We frankly in this country don't even know what is depleting, how much it is. I know obvious big species like elephants and tigers, but we have no idea about the smaller species, the birds, the insects, the plants, what is their status. Very, very sketchy idea.
It is to safeguard these majestic animals that the government and concerned NGOs came forward to launch such conservation efforts as the Project Tiger and the Project Elephant schemes. These animals were chosen as mediums since they are not only capable of generating a more positive public opinion, but also because they lie at the top of the food chain. Conserving them would thus involve the conservation of their ecological chain, which comprises lesser animals as well as their habitats.
Individual project for the lesser animals are not there. But that does not mean government is not taking care of the lesser animal. Because when I am preserving tiger or an elephant, these are actually charismatic mega species which attract the imagination and the attention of the man. That's why we have designed it like this. But when I preserve tiger, I preserve the forest and the entire ecosystem. And if I preserve the ecosystem, I also preserve all the species that live in that ecosystem.
habitats thus conserved under these special projects attract both national and international attention. This attention usually attracts tourists, and though more tourists would mean added revenue to the parks, experts point to the negative aspect of wildlife tourism as a hindrance to good eco-management.
Each such area has certain capacity to hold the tourist traffic, both in terms of accommodation and also management. If that is determined and if it is controlled, then there is no reason why we cannot manage it properly. But when large number of people are going, there is a sewer problem, there is a water problem, the same water is being used by people, animals, and all sorts of things are going on. So you really see the sign of degradation in those areas.
In some cases, it also leads to far too much familiarity of man and of a vehicle vis-a-vis the animals. That sometimes is not very healthy for the animal.
Usually the preserve of concerned professionals or the upper classes, it is only in the last couple of decades that wildlife tourism has managed to gain in popularity among the general populace. But this increase in numbers is not always reflective of an healthy growth in interest among the tourists towards nature.
People go to visit certain areas, for instance, say, in Ranthambore or in Kana or Bandhavgarh. The main focus is that tiger. If tiger darshan is there, the mission is accomplished, people come back. But there is so many other things to be seen. So there has to be an interpretation of the nature. And people talk about ecotourism, but what ecotourism means? What are the ethics to be followed? What are the code of conduct in such areas?
Most of the national parks and sanctuaries in India remain closed during certain periods of the year, usually determined by the seasons. And though this time may not be adequate for the forests to recover from the impact of human curiosity, but they do grant a respite. And despite the negative connotations towards wildlife or nature tourism, there is now a growing consensus among the conservationists themselves that such tourism has become a necessity.
In many cases, it has made the park strong by focusing attention of the people on the park to make it, to make people adore a particular area and to even adore a particular animal, and through that animal, the area which it inhabits, is, I think, a very necessary concomitant to conservation. And tourism does do that.
Increased tourism is probably a result of the increasing urbanization that has taken place. And with the focus of the nation being on the building of infrastructure, the Forest Department is aware that their scope of work in safeguarding the biodiversity of the country has reached a critical stage. And one way of being able to cope with the constant pressure is to invest in better technology. And though some critics contend that the Environment Ministry has not been able to keep pace with changing technology, others point out that it is not so.
In the sphere of forestry and wildlife, our technology is one of the best. But with so much of manpower available in India, if the public awareness is there and people's involvement is there, our people are the human chain in the world which can fight all miseries and the vagaries of the forest destruction.
फिर कैसे करना है? डाट इस्तेमाल हो गई. अब डाट के अंदर तो दवा तो रह जाएगी, उसमें लगी हुई, उसके अंदर जो सुई है उसमें भी रहेगी. ये भी डिस्कस करेंगे इसका क्या करना है.
This is a training session where Forest Department officials are being briefed on the proper usage of darts.
इसमें भी अंदर जो है गोली की तरह है.
These are the latest series of darts available in the country. and when these are loaded with appropriate drugs, they can be used to temporarily capture wild animals. This becomes necessary at times when these animals need to be either studied or radio collared so that their movement can be monitored.
ध्यान देने वाली बात यह है कि जब आप जानवर पे फायर करोगे तो आपको ये अंदाज होना चाहिए इसका प्रेशर कितना होता है, जोर इसमें कितना जो होता है, जो जब ये जो है आप देखो लकड़ी में इतनी दूर तक ये नीडल घुस जा रही है तो जानवर को जब लगेगा तो इसका इम्पैक्ट कितना होता है.
So 4 lakh rupees, this is the second record.
But despite all this training and technological upgradation, the success of conservation finally depends on people's participation. Conservationists say that unless there is awareness among the masses and unless a holistic approach like a biosphere reserve is taken up, conservation may not have the desired effect.
There should be a biosphere reserve other than the existing parks. And there you can have man and biosphere. The biosphere reserve should be started off in places where human beings are living and where they can contribute to conservation outside of protected areas. And there you can have man and biosphere.
In India, there is a growing realization that the tragedy of progress in the 20th century has been its association with deterioration of environment. Gigantic cities and the exorbitant demand for water and energy. A rapid depletion of non-renewable resources. Destruction of life-sustaining properties of the biosphere. The list is endless. Modern technology has often been criticized because it is based on the assumption that nature is an inexhaustible source of resources. But slowly and surely, there is taking place a change in the way man views his environment. For it is now known that unless and until man conserves the environment he lives in and is a part of, there is a risk that someday he too may become extinct.